Hello and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about the recently released books. Welcome back. Again, this is Ray Walters. In sales, we're often handed new scripts, new funnels, and new dashboards, but very rarely are we asked a simple question. What do your customer experience with their senses when they encounter you and your brand? Today's book turns that question into a roadmap. It starts with the timeless foundations of selling, trust, empathy, consultative conversations, and then walks us through how sight, sound, touch, smell, and even taste quietly shape attention, memory, and buying decisions. Along the way, it pulls lesson from coffee shops and retail counters, from global tech giants and neighborhood banks, and it weaves in practical sales challenges that invite you to experiment, reflect, and grow. But this isn't just about clever atmospheres or flashy packaging. At the heart of this book is a conviction that who you are on the inside matters as much as what your customers see on the outside. That inner wisdom, character, and spiritual intelligence should guide how you use these tools so sales become less about transactions and more about building honest, long-term relationships. Our guest has spent more than 20 years leading and coaching sales teams inside some of the world's largest financial institutions, and he's poured those lessons into this new book, Selling Senses: Unlocking the Power of Sensory Sales and Inner Wisdom. We're honored to have him with us on the Author Roundup show. Please welcome Armen Avanessian. Hi, Armen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Ray. Hey, listeners. Excited to be on the Book Connection show and to share more about selling sexes. Excited for this opportunity.
Very much excited to have this conversation with you today. But first off, I just want to congratulate you for getting this book published. This is your first book. You're very much experienced in sales. Uh, Took a couple of years before you decided to write this all down into this book that we can use, especially for people who are into the profession.
Yes, absolutely. So the heart of this book and the true reason why I actually wrote Selling Senses is we have a family history of dementia. So
Mhm.
as I'm growing in my seasons in sales, I wanted to make sure that I leave something behind in the event in the future that I'm unable to share the value and the knowledge that I've gained over the past 20 years in the financial services industry. So really, it's my passion put on the book to share with the world to add future impact.
Right. And I'm glad that you've decided to share this to us. And today is a very wonderful day to get this conversation rolling. Armin, when you first sat down to write Selling Senses, uh, what problem or frustration in the sales world were you trying to address?
Yeah, really great question, right? Being in sales and leadership for over 20 years, as you mentioned, I was truly not satisfied with just seeing a worldly perspective to sales and
Mm,
felt sales was losing its soul. I know that sounds dire, but I was witnessing sales conversations being reduced, as you mentioned, to scripts, quotas, and transactions. I was observing teams chasing numbers, but missing connecting with people. I saw customers feeling managed, not understood. So that gap between human connection and mechanical selling was the frustration that drove me to ultimately write Selling Senses. So essentially, Selling Senses was born as a response to share both a secular and spiritual perspective to sales. It's a call to bring sales back to its essence and to engage the whole person through the five senses and in the sixth sense of inner wisdom, and to remind us that selling at its best is not persuasion, but it's about service.
all right. Armin, you've spent more than 2 decades in sales leadership across major financial institutions. How did those real world experiences shape the core ideas in this book?
Yeah, very great question. So, being in financial services for predominantly my entire career, You quickly understand that every conversation carries weight because people are trusting you with their finances and future. I
Mm,
learned I learned quickly it wasn't about the product sheets, it wasn't about the rate chart. It was about presence. It was about empathy. It was
mm,
about building trust. So
right.
when someone's sitting across from you talking about their savings, their retirement, their
Mm,
children's education, they're not looking for a transaction. They're looking for a relationship. Those years were foundational in teaching me that sensory and spiritual intelligence aren't abstract concepts. They're
okay.
truly practical tools. So the way that you listen, the tone you use, the environment that we create, even the intuition you bring into the room, all those shape whether clients feel safe and understood. And that's what separates a transactional banker from a trusted advisor. So the principles in selling senses were forged in these high stakes environments where the
Mhm.
cost of getting it wrong was more than losing a sale, it was losing trust. So the book, in theory, it's about lived reality of what works when human connection becomes the foundation of selling.
Early in the book, you revisit foundational principles. You have trust, consultative selling, understanding your product, market and customer. Um, why is it important to go back to basics before uh, talking about the senses?
Yeah, because with most things in life, when we think about it, whether we're building a house, whether
Mm,
it's launching a new business or developing your own career, you can't start with the finishing touches. You need a foundation before structure.
right,
So
right.
in sales, that foundation is trust,
Yeah.
it's consultative selling, and it's a deep understanding of your product, market, and customer. Without those, sensory strategies that we're discussing are just like Christmas decorations. The senses can amplify connection, but they can't replace integrity. That's why
Right.
I believe in integrity before amplification. Going back to the basic was my way of reminding the readers that sensory selling isn't a shortcut or a gimmick, but it's
Mm,
built on timeless principles that hold everything else up together. So when we think about being in a tech driven, data obsessed age, those fundamentals are even more important than ever because they ensure that the advanced techniques rest on something strong, stable, and lasting.
all right. You also talk a lot about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation as part of
Correct.
effective selling. How have you seen EQ change the way a salesperson shows up in front of a client?
Yeah. EQ, emotional changes, intelligence changes everything. It can change the room. So I've
Right.
watched salespeople who used to push and pressure suddenly
Yeah.
learn to pause, listen, and meet the client where they are. The
Mm,
moment they stop talking at someone and start connecting with them, everything shifts. The client
right.
leans in, right? Trust starts to build, and the conversation feels less like a pitch and more
Mm,
like a partnership. So, Ray, think of it this way: self awareness would be a mirror, which helps the salesperson notice their own tone, pace, and presence. So instead of steamrolling the moment, they step back to recognize they need to slow down, adjust, and simply listen. And then from there, empathy would be like a bridge.
okay.
It allows them to step into the client's shoes, to feel
Mm,
what matters most from the client's perspective. That shift turns the conversation for that salesperson from product driven to people driven. And
mm,
then when we think about self regulation, that ultimately is the anchor. It
mm,
keeps them grounded when tensions rise, when targets need to be achieved. So helping them respond with calm instead of defensiveness, right?
right.
Clients sense that steadiness, and that steadiness is what builds that trust. So put together these qualities of self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, they change how a salesperson communicates. They
Mm,
change how they essentially show up in front of that person. So for
mm,
me, EQ, emotional intelligence, it's not a buzzword. It's a
yeah.
daily practice that truly transforms selling from performance into service and from being heard to being trusted.
Okay. When you look at the five traditional senses, sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste, which one do you think is most underused in sales? And what happens when we start paying attention to it?
Yeah, I believe the most underused is going to be hearing, but not
Mm,
just hearing,
listening.
specifically active listening, right?
Yeah,
So when the person's speaking, you're not thinking about that next question or thinking about what you're going to be doing on Friday night. You're truly engaged in the moment. It's the most underused sense in sales from my perspective. Too often,
mm,
salespeople hear words, but don't truly listen to the meaning, the emotion, or the hesitation behind those words. So when we start paying attention to hearing, conversations start to shift. Customers feel understood instead of being managed, as we discussed. We tend to catch those subtle cues, right? The pause before the answer, the change in tone
right.
that reveal what really matters. So active listening builds trust faster than any pitch because it shows the customer their voice is valued and heard. And once your customer trusts you, that opens the door to have much deeper conversations, to understand needs, and then to make the appropriate recommendations or solutions that would address those needs.
I totally agree. Active listening is very fundamental. For me, it not only, trust comes from you being able to show that you are interested. And active
Correct.
listening is one way for you to show your customers or whoever it is that you're talking to or speaking with that you are interested. When you're able to truly listen to what the customer is saying, what the other
Correct.
person is saying, you uncover a lot of things if you do that. Um,
Absolutely.
the book is full of real world examples. That's what I like about it. From coffee shops and retailers to banks and fintech companies using sensory experiences to lift engagement in sales. Could you share a favorite example and the key lesson you hope readers take from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt it was very important to put real life examples, right? I've read so many books where the foundations or the facts are laid, but little to kind of support or give you guidance on how to actually achieve exactly what may be already taking place in
Mm,
the marketplace. So, one of my favorite examples is Chick-fil-A. They've
okay.
built a reputation not just for food, but on customer experience
Mm,
from warm greeting of my pleasure to my welcome, right? Your welcome, I should say, to the cleanliness of their restaurants, to the consistency of the taste and food and service. Every detail when you think about Chick-fil-A is very intentional. But from
mm,
my perspective, what really sets them apart is that they are one of the few companies that are willing to engage the sixth sense, spiritual intelligence. And how
okay.
they do that is they advertise that they are closed on Sundays, and it's
Mm,
a day devoted to faith and family, right? So that decision alone from Chick-fil-A communicates to its customers value, rest, and purpose. And it deeply resonates with these customers who see the brand as principled and trustworthy, hence why their lines are always busy. The key lesson is that excellence in sales isn't only about the product, that's part of the equation. It's about creating an atmosphere of care and aligning with values.
right. It makes the company or the product relatable, uh, human, I should say, very much sensitive to not only what's being focused on by the business, but also the other things that comes along with it. Um,
Correct.
you also introduce neuromarketing, looking at the brain's responses to brands, packaging, and pricing. How do you encourage salespeople to use that kind of science ethically and responsibly?
Yeah, really good question, right? When we start thinking about making sure we're doing the things the right way, with most things in life, Ray, there's an inherent possibility for good and bad,
Mm,
right? And neuromarketing is no different because influencing the brain can sound manipulative, let's just be honest, right?
yeah.
I but I always emphasize, as we mentioned, the importance of integrity. When
Okay.
used well, neuromarketing removes friction, it clarifies value, and it creates joy for that customer. And of course, when used poorly, it can deceive, it can exploit, and it can manipulate. So the science itself, it's neutral.
Okay.
It's the intent behind that truly matters. So
Okay.
neuromarketing
Yeah.
helps us understand subconscious responses, but the purpose should always be to serve customers better,
Right. Yes.
not take advantage of them.
Yes.
So in essence, influence without integrity is manipulation, and influence with honesty is service.
Mm, I like that. Many sales interactions now, happen through screens. You have apps, websites. I'm not sure video calls, but there's an uptick, right? What does sensory selling look like in a digital or remote world where you can't control a physical store environment?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about what we're doing today, right? A
Right.
podcast virtually, right? So we're truly right now engaging some of those senses, right? We have the visual going on as we speak, right? I can touch the screen right? I can hear you, right? So all of those
Right.
components are at play. So for me, censoring selling is alive and thriving in both digital and remote environments,
Mm.
whether it's visual clarity in apps, the sound design of notifications we hear, or even touch-based cues in fintech tools, all these shape how customers experience a brand. As I mentioned, think about a video call, right? The
Right.
tone of voice and background visuals become part of the sensory landscape. And keep in mind, Ray, it's not necessarily always about forcing all five or all six senses in every interaction. That may not be realistic. It's
Yeah.
really about engaging in as many senses as the median allows, so the
Mhm. Mhm.
customer feels more connected, more present, and more valued. So I'll give you a quick example.
Okay.
Let's consider a virtual cooking class. I love to cook.
Yeah.
So, so, so the sight, right, comes through watching the chef demonstrate techniques on the screen. The sound would be the narration or the stories, right, or the cultural context that's woven into the lesson by the chef. And then when we think about taste and smell, those are experienced as the participants prepare the recipe at home with shipped or pre-purchased ingredients.
Right.
The touch is us, kneading the dough or stirring the sauce or
Mhm. Mhm.
using
Mhm.
those utensils. And even the sixth sense is engaged, right? When the host invites you to reflect on deeper meaning of food, right? Connection,
Right.
tradition, family. So even online, the senses and inner wisdom can be woven together to create powerful human experiences.
Um, Speaking of senses, you devote a chapter to the sixth sense, inner wisdom, spiritual intelligence, and intuition. In practical terms, what does that look like for someone who carries a sales quota every month?
Yeah, so for someone who's carrying a sales quota every month, and let's look at these individually, right?
Mm,
So we can break them down. Inner wisdom would be that quiet voice that reminds you to slow down and to see the
mhm.
bigger picture. It
Okay.
helps you to prioritize solutions that generally serve the client, not just products that happen to be available or may
Mm,
fit the need that you're trying to achieve. So it's putting
okay.
the customer at the center of everything that you're doing. The second component about spiritual intelligence, right? We also kind of speak to spiritual intuition, but in order to develop that spiritual intuition, there has to be development of spiritual intelligence. So when you think about where does that spiritual intelligence come from, for me, it comes from studying the Word of God, right?
Mm,
And so for me, that's what helps me to lay the foundation to gain greater spiritual intuition. So spiritual intelligence would be the compass that keeps one's decisions grounded in values. It asks, does this serve the client? Does this reflect integrity? Am I doing the right thing? Right.
right.
So in the rush for quotas, meeting quotas,
Yeah.
it transforms selling from a number game into a calling to serve. And that last piece that I briefly touched on, intuition, It's essentially intuition helps you notice what the data can't capture.
Okay.
That hesitation in the client's voice, or the unspoken concerns that you can read through body language, right? Or
Yeah.
the subtle shifts in tone. It
Yes.
helps anticipate objections and uncover genuine needs, guiding conversations toward authenticity. So together, these three components, inner wisdom, spiritual intelligence, intuition, they create discernment. So for someone carrying a quota,
Mhm.
discernment means selling with courage and conscience, focused on building trust, deepening relationships, and finding purpose beyond the numbers.
Okay. When someone really embraced a sensory and inner wisdom approach to selling, what changed first? Their numbers, their relationships, or their sense of purpose in the work?
Yeah, great question, right? For me, it's easy. I would say sense of purpose changes first.
Hmm.
When salespeople truly understand why they sell, so
Okay.
their why behind quotas and products, and for everyone that's different, they start to show up differently. That clarity shapes how they listen, how
Okay.
they value the client's story, and how they view selling as service rather than persuasion. From purpose comes stronger relationships, right? Customers feel the difference when someone is grounded in meaning, and trust
Mhm.
grows naturally. With
Okay.
purpose and relationships in place, results naturally will follow. So numbers improve because they're not built on authenticity. I'm sorry, they're built on authenticity, not pressure. And
Yeah.
essentially, purpose becomes the catalyst fueling connection, and it is the connection that drives sustainable success.
I think with this kind of approach, it makes your life as a salesperson easier. I mean, it's not just all about the quota. Um, when you're able to provide a, a really good experience as the customer decides on whether to take advantage of what you're offering or not, there's, for me, sense of fulfillment there.
Yeah,
Yeah, not only hitting the numbers, but also making sure that you're doing it right.
correct.
And you're it also, the sales experience that your customers get out of their conversation with you, um, for me, is a make or break thing. When they come back for second business, you know,
That's when
that
you know you've done things right.
right. True. Throughout the book, Armin, you include sales intelligence questions and challenges asking readers to pause, reflect, and act. If every reader only did one of those exercises consistently for 30 days, which one would you choose and why?
Yeah, great question. Those challenges that I put in the book and those questions were definitely intentional. I wanted to make sure the readers had some form of practical application after each lesson that was taught in these chapters. So, what can I do immediately to walk away to implement what I learned today? So, I would tell the readers I would choose the practice of intentional listening or active listening. So, for 30 days, commit to asking one more question before offering a solution to your customer.
Right.
This simple discipline changes everything. It changes the conversation. Customers and prospects feel heard, trust grows, and solutions
True.
become more relevant, right? So listening is most underrated sales skill, and I believe it transfers outcomes when practiced consistently. So I'll give you a quick example. A customer says, Ray, I'm interested in your software today. I want to purchase your software. So instead of Ray jumping in right away to sell the solution, Ray pauses and instead of launching in all the features, he asks a simple question. What problem are you hoping it will solve?
Yeah.
That one question shifts the conversation from product driven to now solution driven, and the client now feels understood and heard.
That's a very good choice. I think, again, we've already talked about active listening. And in today's society, we listen to respond. For me, we
Correct.
listen to respond, not to understand. And I think that's one thing. If it transcends, it's not only a sales skill, but in the relation, because sales is for me relationship building.
Absolutely.
And our interactions with people, whether it's professional or personal, it's all about building relationships. And active listening is really a very good skill to practice. It for at the very least, I've 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 experienced it myself. If you listen actively, if you listen to understand, it's it changes everything, the dynamics of the relationship, how that person responds to you when you're conversing with them.
Yeah, it's the foundation to what I call H2H, right? Human to human connection.
Right.
Once someone knows that you're genuinely listening and you truly care about what they have to say, and you can validate those, right? There's sales techniques where you repeat what the person said to you, so you validate what they heard,
Yes.
right? So
On a
that you're
tactical level. Right.
correct. So
True,
you're
true.
confirming validation that I heard you. I heard what you're speaking to me. So
Right.
there is no greater foundational skill, I would say, in sales than active listening.
I agree. I truly agree with that. Armin, I'm kind of like sad that I'm down to the last question I'm supposed to ask you.
Me too. I would love to
Yeah.
keep going.
But of course, before I even close this short interview, this interesting conversation that we're having, I know that some of our viewers and listeners right now are very much interested to get a copy of your book. For those who are interested, where can they grab a copy of your book, Selling Senses?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that plug. Right now, you can definitely make that purchase on Amazon.com and
Mhm.
soon through sellingsenses.com, which is my website that you can also make that purchase. Also, God willing, as the future we move forward, we look to launch into bookstores and other online mediums. But if you're looking to make that purchase today, you can do that on Amazon.
Right. And we will also be providing links for our viewers and listeners to access on the description box of the video and on the podcast. Um, Armin, as we wrap up, what final encouragement would you give to the men and women listening who want to sell in a way that serves people well and creates lasting value?
Awesome. Ray, really, I appreciated our time today. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for all the thoughtful questions. I'll leave the listeners and readers with this. My final encouragement is I want to share that sales is more than just a profession, it's truly a calling to serve. When you sell with empathy, when you engage all these senses, and you trust your inner wisdom, you don't just start to close deals, you begin to open the doors to trust, impact, and purpose. And
Right.
that's what starts to begin to change people's lives, including yours. And remember this, selling isn't about persuasion, it's about service. Thanks so much.
Armin, truly a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for discussing your book with us, for sharing your expertise on selling.
Awesome.
I pray for your success, for your continued success, not only for you, but for your family, for whatever it is that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Ray. God bless you as well. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you for your time as well. I also want to give a big shout out to our awesome viewers and listeners for joining us for this interview. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the Author Roundup. I'm Ray Walters. Join me next time as we explore the world of supported self publishing, one indie author at a time.